The perfect twin. Imagine sharing a face with the person who wants your life. The same smile. The same voice. But only one of you knows what it really costs to wear it. My name is Samantha Hale, and for most of my life, I thought being a twin was a blessing. My sister Sabrina and I were born 3 minutes apart, identical in every way except for one thing, our choices. Where I was steady, Sabrina was spontaneous. Where I planned, she improvised. Where I worried, she dazzled. Growing up, people called us the Hale twins, but they never mixed us up for long. I was the responsible one. She was the fun one. It sounds harmless, but those labels grew sharper with time. By high school, Sabrina had become the social star, homecoming queen, drama club president, the kind of person who turned every hallway into a stage. I was the quiet achiever, straight A's, part-time job, college applications color-coded in a binder. Mom used to laugh and say, "You two are like fire and water, but you need each other." She wasn't wrong. But she never warned me what happens when fire tries to take water's place. After college, our paths split like two rivers moving in opposite directions. I landed a job at a major marketing firm in Chicago, Lamont and Gray, a place where deadlines came faster than heartbeats and every idea had to justify its existence. Sabrina, on the other hand, bounced between creative gigs, a few modeling contracts, social media promotions, brand collabs that fizzled out. She was charming, talented, and relentlessly inconsistent. Still, I admired her. She had the kind of charisma I envied, the ability to walk into a room and make people want to listen. She envied me too, though she'd never say it out loud. She envied my structure, my stability, my success, the things that looked easy from the outside but cost me sleepless nights and constant self-doubt. I should have known that envy has a way of turning admiration into ambition. Twins are supposed to mirror each other. But sometimes, a mirror doesn't reflect. It wants to replace. Everything started the day she came to visit me at work. It was a Friday, I remember, because I'd just finished a huge presentation that had gone surprisingly well. My boss, Mason Turner, had actually smiled, a rare celestial event in our office. Sabrina showed up that afternoon, glowing as usual, holding an iced coffee like it was a prop in her own movie. "Wow," she said, looking around. "This place is intense." "It's not that bad," I laughed. "Just loud and caffeinated." She perched on the edge of my desk, scanning the awards on my shelf. "I don't know how you do it," she said. "This job. These people. All this pressure." I shrugged. "You get used to it." She looked at me then, really looked. And in that glance, I saw it, envy. Pure, sharp envy. If you've ever had someone look at your success and see the destination, not the struggle, subscribe. Because not everyone who claps for you is cheering. 2 weeks later, she called out of nowhere. "Sam, I have amazing news." "What's up?" "I got a temp job, at Lamont and Gray." "Isn't that crazy? What are the odds?" I froze. "Wait, my firm?" "Yeah. Different department though. Client relations." My stomach tightened. "Did you tell them you're my sister?" "Of course. Why wouldn't I?" She laughed. They were thrilled. Said it'll be fun having two Hales around. Fun. That was one word for it. Still, I tried to stay positive. Maybe it would be nice having her there. Maybe she'd finally understand that success wasn't about luck or charisma, it was about showing up every day, even when you were exhausted. But I underestimated her ambition, and overestimated her honesty. At first, it was small things. Coworkers would stop me in the hall and say, "Great idea in the meeting earlier." Except, I hadn't been in that meeting. Then, a client emailed me thanking me for my help with the campaign draft. A draft. When I confronted Sabrina, she just grinned. "Oh, relax. They probably just got us mixed up." It's not my fault we look alike. But it was her fault, because she didn't correct them. Sometimes people don't steal your identity. They borrow it. And wait for you to be too polite to take it back. It escalated fast. A month later, Mason called me into his office. He smiled, again, that rare smile. "You've really stepped up lately, Samantha. The new clients are raving about your communication skills." I blinked. "Thank you." He nodded. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up." I left his office feeling sick. Because I knew exactly what was happening. Sabrina wasn't just blending in, she was becoming me. And I'd handed her the costume. I'd spent my whole life protecting my sister. It never occurred to me that I'd have to protect myself from her. Credit taken, trust broken. When someone wears your face and your resume, the world can't tell the difference, until the work begins to show who really did it. I should have trusted the small alarms. They came as little misalignments at first. A client copied the wrong email address and praised Samantha for a strategy I'd never drafted. A teammate thanked me for handling the scope in Slack when I hadn't participated in that conversation. Each one was easy to dismiss, a name mix-up, a fluke. The problem was the pattern. They always pointed to Sabrina. At first I tried the polite correction. "Oh, actually that was Sabrina, she stepped in." Or I'd CC myself on notes I hadn't previously been on, just to create traceable footprints of involvement. But when that didn't stop the drift, I started documenting everything: meeting notes, timestamps, drafts. I kept a running file of my work, not because I wanted proof for a fight, but because at some point I felt the ground beneath me wobble and I needed something solid to stand on. One Tuesday, Mason pulled me aside. He was in his late 40s, had a voice like rumpled linen, and until that morning I'd thought his occasional warmth was the highest praise I could hope for. He looked oddly apologetic. "Sam," he said, "there's a client dinner next week with a major CPG brand. We'd like you to come and present on the creative brief. You've earned the visibility." He leaned forward. "We want you to be front and center." I don't know what I expected: genuine enthusiasm? Pride? Instead, I felt a cold spike of dread. Sabrina had been hovering around my calendar for weeks, but she'd never asked about the client. She didn't know the brief. She didn't know my deck. And yet the office had already started assuming she did. "You want me to present?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "Yes," Mason said. "You've earned it." I went back to my desk and opened my laptop, palms sweating. I pulled up the slides I'd been refining for days and then, like a person checking the weather before a storm, I checked the office chat. Sabrina's username pinged the channel with a sparkling GIF and a comment: "Can't wait for Sam to crush it next week. Hashtag twin power." A laugh emoji and half a dozen hearts. No one thought it odd. That night I rehearsed until my voice was raw. I drafted Q&A responses, anticipated objections, and rehearsed the cadence I used to get through the tougher questions. I wanted to be flawless, not because I craved perfection, but because the room felt like a stage with invisible traps. One misstep and the credit trail might vanish into rumor again. Then, 3 days before the dinner, Mason's assistant stuck her head into our bullpen and announced, "Change of plan. Sabrina will be joining the client call on Thursday to shadow. Sam, we still want your slides, but Sabrina will co-present to get some exposure." The co-present came with hand-squeezing enthusiasm from people who'd seen Sabrina do a single polished elevator pitch at a holiday party. My mouth went dry. Is this a deliberate mentorship? I asked the assistant. Am I mentoring Sabrina through this, or? She fluttered apologetically. Oh, it's just a development opportunity. Nothing to worry about. It will be great for both of you. Nothing to worry about. Which was office speak for, "Please don't make a fuss, Sam." That night I called Sabrina. Her voice was bright. "They love the idea of us doing this together. Isn't that exciting?" She said it as if she'd been responsible for the arrangement. There was a click of lipstick, a background soundtrack of someone clearly enjoying the moment. I could have corrected it then. I could have insisted the presentation be mine alone. But I hesitated, partly because I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, and partly because the phrase, co-present, felt, on paper, harmless. What I didn't yet understand was how enthralling visibility is to someone who's always lived in the glow of being noticed, not respected. If you've ever watched someone take what you built without apology, subscribe. These stories are for people who learn the cost of success the hard way. The dinner arrived. The client was a glossy brand team with polished shoes and sharper questions. I opened with the insights we developed, the strategy backed by data, and the creative hooks the team had spent weeks iterating. Sabrina chimed in twice, once to laugh at a joke I'd made and once to repeat a line from the deck. She was charming, sure-footed, and exactly the kind of person clients want in a photo op. The clients smiled at her. I stayed in the middle of the room, presenting, answering, and then, during the closing round of praise, the client's CMO singled her out. "You two are clearly a dynamic sibling team," she said, smiling. "Sabrina, you have a real way of engaging audiences. We loved your points about brand voice." I felt my lungs thin. Mason beamed. He used the word cohesive like a bomb, but the applause in the room landed on Sabrina. The emails afterward were effusive, "Great job. Loved the presentation." All signed, ironically, by people who hadn't heard much of the work that went into it. I tried to keep perspective. Maybe the client genuinely responded to Sabrina's delivery. Maybe this was a lesson in delegation. But over the following weeks the drip-drip effect continued, opportunities started routing toward her. Meetings I should have been asked to join were scheduled in her calendar. A mentor at the agency asked Sabrina for coffee to talk career growth. My manager praised the new synergy the twins brought. I felt invisible and furious in equal measure. The natural thing was to confront her. But every time I tried to call her out, subtly, privately, she'd deflect with charm or turn the conversation to drama she knew would make me the peacemaker again. "Sam," she'd say, "we both need to celebrate. Don't be so tense." She knew exactly the buttons to press because she'd always watched me push them myself. So I made a different choice. I stopped covering for her. It was a small, deliberate act. When clients thanked Sabrina for the coordination she'd claimed, I forwarded them the actual emails with the original timestamps showing my contributions. When a teammate assumed Sabrina had handled a task I'd done, I CC'd myself in future communications as a habit, a trail that would be harder to erase. But that was administrative. The real test was what I did when Sabrina finally stepped into a role she could no longer fake. We got a last-minute RFP from a major retail client, an all-hands, overnight sprint producing a full omni-channel launch proposal. Too big for a temp. Too visible to fail. Mason needed a lead. He asked the creative leads to propose names. Sabrina was quick to volunteer, her voice bright in the meeting room, and she didn't hesitate to use our twinhood as leverage. "I've been shadowing Sam. I can do it," she said. A dozen heads turned to me. I could have said no and protected the work that defined me. I could have asked Mason to assign someone with more experience. But I saw a different strategy emerge in my mind, one that felt like moral pressure but was also honest: give her the responsibility and step back. Not to sabotage. Not to seek schadenfreude. To let her experience the pressure she envied. To give the spotlight she wanted, with the real work attached. So I put my hand up. If Sabrina is going to lead, I'll support her as a technical resource, I told Mason. I'll help with the deck and the data elements, but she's the point person. Mason nodded, relieved. Great. This will be a good growth opportunity. Sabrina's eyes glittered. Thank you. I won't let you down. I left the meeting with a strange hunger in my chest, equal parts fear and a fierce, quiet hope that reality would do more teaching than I ever could. There's a kind of mercy in not rescuing. When someone wants your life, sometimes the only honest service you can perform is handing them the work that makes that life heavy. The spotlight burns hotter up close. People always dream about standing in the spotlight. Until they realize how hot it really gets. The morning after that meeting, I walked into the office to find Sabrina already at my desk, glowing with excitement and nerves. She had 2 coffees in hand, my usual order, caramel latte, an olive branch in paper form. Big day, she chirped. Guess I'm officially leading my first campaign. I smiled thinly. You earned it. Her grin faltered, just for a moment, as if she sensed the weight behind my words. But she quickly masked it with that performative charm she was famous for. Don't worry, she said, waving her hand. I've watched you do this 100 times. I've got it covered. I wanted to warn her that watching and doing are 2 very different games, but I didn't. Because some lessons can't be handed over, they have to be earned the hard way. The client was one of Lamont and Gray's biggest accounts, a national retail chain about to launch its largest digital rebranding campaign in a decade. The pressure was immense. The deadline? Brutal. We had 48 hours to produce a multi-platform concept, complete with mock-ups, copy, rollout plan, and pitch deck. Usually, I'd be the one coordinating everything, timing the workflow like a conductor, balancing creative chaos with rigid deadlines. This time, I sat back. Quiet. Observant. And Sabrina, who had begged for the spotlight, stepped right into it. The first few hours, she was radiant. She flitted from desk to desk like a spark of energy, calling creative meetings, tossing around buzzwords, charming the copywriters. At one point, she leaned over my desk and said with a wink, "See? Easy. You just have to make people want to work for you." I nodded. Sure. Just wait until the second night when no one wants to work at all. She laughed, thinking I was joking. By the end of the first day, the cracks began to show. The copy team was behind. The designers were waiting for brand guidelines that hadn't been updated. The data team, me, was asking for direction on the performance KPIs, something she'd promised to get to later. I watched her smile start to twitch at the edges. The performative confidence started to look like panic. Still, she refused to ask for help. Sometimes watching someone fail isn't satisfying. It's heartbreaking. Especially when the person you're watching shares your face. By 9 p.m., most of the team had gone home. The only light came from computer screens, the hum of printers, and the faint sound of the city outside. Sabrina was still there, pacing, muttering, scrolling through old emails, trying to piece together what she'd missed. I stayed too, quiet, invisible, sitting at the far end of the bullpen, working on data visuals she hadn't even realized she needed yet. Around midnight, she finally walked over. Her eyes were red-rimmed but defiant. "Why didn't anyone tell me the brief changed?" she snapped. I looked up. It was in the update I sent earlier. Twice. She frowned. "Well, I didn't see it." "You didn't open it." Her lips tightened. "You could have said something." "I could have," I said. "But you told Mason you wanted to lead. That means you take ownership of every detail, the ones you like and the ones that exhaust you." For the first time in our entire professional lives, Sabrina didn't have a comeback. She just stood there, the room's silence pressing on her, and whispered, "I didn't realize how much you do." I smiled softly. That's the point. If you've ever been replaced by someone who thought your life was easy, subscribe. Because they never see the cost until they have to pay it themselves. By morning, she was unraveling. The client had changed direction overnight, the design team was frustrated, and Mason was demanding a revised deck by noon. When I walked into the meeting room, I found her staring at her laptop, fingers hovering uselessly above the keyboard. "Need help?" I asked gently. She looked up, exhausted. "I'm not you, Sam. I can't keep up." "You wanted to be me," I said quietly. She nodded, no defensiveness this time, just tired honesty. "I thought it was glamorous. That everyone listened to you because you're confident. I didn't realize they listened because you never stop working." I took a deep breath, then sat beside her. Here's what we'll do, I said. You'll finish the front section, the creative summary. I'll handle the data insights. We'll rebuild this together. But this time, you'll stay until the end. She nodded, tears threatening at the edges of her lashes. And we did. For 12 straight hours, we worked side by side. No rivalry, no pretending, just two exhausted women trying to save a project that had spiraled beyond control. By the time we presented the final deck, Sabrina's voice cracked on slide 7. Her hands trembled. But she got through it. And when the clients clapped, it wasn't the easy applause she was used to, it was earned. Afterward, she leaned close and whispered, "Now I understand why you're always so tired. Some lessons don't need to be taught with words. They need to be lived, until the pride burns away and what's left is understanding." That night, after everyone left, we stood by the office windows watching the lights of the city blink awake. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I didn't mean to take what was yours. I just wanted to feel like I mattered too." I nodded. "You do. But you can't feel that by stealing someone else's light. You have to build your own." She exhaled shakily. "I think I finally get that." And for the first time in years, she looked like my sister again, not my rival. When someone finally sees the truth you've been living all along, it doesn't feel like revenge. It feels like release. She looked up, exhausted. "I'm not you, Sam. I can't keep up." "You wanted to be me," I said quietly. She nodded, no defensiveness this time, just tired honesty. "I thought it was glamorous. That everyone listened to you because you're confident. I didn't realize they listened because you never stop working." I took a deep breath, then sat beside her. "Here's what we'll do," I said. "You'll finish the front section, the creative summary. I'll handle the data insights. We'll rebuild this together. But this time, you'll stay until the end." She nodded, tears threatening at the edges of her lashes. And we did. For 12 straight hours, we worked side by side. No rivalry, no pretending, just two exhausted women trying to save a project that had spiraled beyond control. By the time we presented the final deck, Sabrina's voice cracked on slide 7. Her hands trembled. But she got through it. And when the clients clapped, it wasn't the easy applause she was used to, it was earned. Afterward, she leaned close and whispered, "Now I understand why you're always so tired. Some lessons don't need to be taught with words. They need to be lived, until the pride burns away and what's left is understanding." That night, after everyone left, we stood by the office windows watching the lights of the city blink awake. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I didn't mean to take what was yours. I just wanted to feel like I mattered too." I nodded. "You do. But you can't feel that by stealing someone else's light. You have to build your own." She exhaled shakily. "I think I finally get that." And for the first time in years, she looked like my sister again, not my rival. When someone finally sees the truth you've been living all along, it doesn't feel like revenge. It feels like release. Accountability, respect, and the real cost of the spotlight. Getting what you think you want is simple. Keeping it, honestly, steadily, without shortcuts, is the test. After that brutal overnight sprint, something in Sabrina shifted. It wasn't immediate repentance or a dramatic confession, it was smaller and steadier, a willingness to show up for the unglamorous parts of work. She stopped pretending that being seen was the same as being competent. She began to ask questions instead of bluffing answers. She started staying for the long hours not for applause but because work demanded it. When Monday rolled around, Mason called a meeting. I walked in expecting a hush or another awkward compliment about team synergy. Instead, he addressed the room with a weight I hadn't expected. "Team," he said, eyes scanning our bullpen, "we pulled this off under impossible circumstances." Sam and Sabrina led the charge. That said, leadership isn't just about who speaks the loudest. It's about who organizes the chaos when no one's watching. He turned to Sabrina. You stepped into a leadership role and learned quickly. But there were some missteps, missed communications, a few oversights that could have cost us the client. We value your initiative, but we can't reward optics over delivery. The room hummed. I felt Sabrina's shoulder tense beside me. Mason continued, we're offering Sabrina a 3-month development plan, shadowing lead strategists, ownership of smaller modular projects, and a review at the end. If she demonstrates consistent, traceable impact, we'll consider a permanent role expansion. For now, Sam, we want you to keep owning the strategic deliverables you already do best. There was relief folded into my chest I hadn't known I needed. The message was fair, not punitive, not indulgent. It acknowledged ambition but insisted on measurable competence. Sabrina looked at me, jaw loose. For a beat I expected the old reflex, charm, deflection, a flurry of excuses. Instead she said, voice low, thank you. I'll do it. I'll prove myself the right way. I wanted to believe her. More than that, I wanted her to believe it for herself. If you've ever needed someone to learn the hard way so they could grow for real, subscribe. These are stories about accountability, not score settling. The next weeks were gritty. Sabrina's development plan wasn't glamorous. She handled smaller product categories, sat in on painful financial reviews, and, worst of all, she told me later, she did the spreadsheets I'd long hidden from her. She complained sometimes. She called at midnight after a long day and said, why does data hate me? I laughed and then taught her how to read a pivot table. She showed up for the work she'd once ducked. At times she regressed. There were moments when an anxious smile returned, when she'd flirt with old habits, claiming credit where the team had actually pulled an all-nighter. Each time, I refused to rescue the narrative. Instead, I pointed her toward the records, timestamps, version histories, co-authored notes. I coached her in being precise. Name the work you did, the people you collaborated with, and what changed because of it, I told her. Don't let charisma be your only currency. Slowly, she began to build her own ledger. Small wins accumulated into a pattern of reliability. At the 3-month review, Mason praised the progress. Sabrina has shown consistent accountability and is beginning to take on more complex pieces, he said. We'll extend the development program another quarter and start shifting ownership incrementally. When the meeting broke, Sabrina hugged me. You didn't have to do that, she said, voice raw. To keep supporting me even when I made it hard. I let her hug me because it felt honest, gratitude without theatrics. Accountability changed her relationships at work, too. People who'd once assumed she was all charm began to treat her like a colleague. They asked for her take on tactical matters, not just for background color for pitches. She lost some of the easy popularity that came with surface-level glamour but gained something steadier, the respect that follows competence and consistency. At home, our dynamic shifted in small, human ways. We still bickered, twins do, about coffee orders and thermostats, but the resentment that had once threaded our conversations thinned. She called me before taking bold actions now, not to ask permission but to say, I'm thinking of doing X. What do you think? And when she failed, as humans do, she owned it, then sought to fix it. One evening, months later, she sat me down in our kitchen and slid an envelope across the counter. Inside was a typed note, formal in a way our childhood notes never were. Sam, I know I took shortcuts and hid behind what's easy to sell, charm and looks. I want to build the things you built through discipline. I want to earn respect, not borrow it. I'm sorry. I promise to keep proving it. There were no flourishes, no dramatic pleas. And that mattered. The apology felt like a contract she intended to keep. Sometimes the merciful thing isn't to keep rescuing. It's to insist the person you love do the work that will actually make them whole. There was a pivotal moment that sealed the new reality for both of us. A major holiday push required seamless execution across channels. Sabrina was assigned the product brief for a niche demographic she'd once dismissed as boring. She threw herself into it, interviews, data analysis, user testing. When the campaign launched, it outperformed expectations. The client sent a note praising the nuance and empathy of the creative. It feels like you actually listened to our customer. She came into the bullpen with tears she didn't hide. I did it, she said simply. I actually did the work. I watched her, not as a rival, but as someone who'd learned how to stay the course. Pride rose in me like a warm tide that had nothing to do with ownership and everything to do with watching a person become themselves. At our year-end review, the agency recognized her growth. They offered her a permanent role in client strategy, not as my shadow, but as her own person. She accepted. The applause in the room felt deserved, measured, not theatrical. And when she turned to me, I saw humility and gratitude, not entitlement. The story didn't end with a perfect sisterly montage. We still disagreed. We still tested each other's boundaries. But now there was an axis of mutual respect. I protected my work and my time. She learned to respect the labor that produced what she once envied. We built agreements in writing. We asked for help and offered it without strings. A year after that first stolen email and the overnight sprint that changed everything, we sat on the roof of our building with 2 cups of coffee as the city lit up below. Sabrina nudged my shoulder and said, I never realized how lonely it could be to shine if you don't actually do the work. She laughed, a little sadly. You mean it doesn't feel great to be applauded for an idea that someone else executed? I said. No, she said. It feels empty. I finally get why you're tired, because caring that much takes everything. I want to be tired in that way, not the other one. I bumped her shoulder back. Welcome to the long game. She wanted my life, the visibility, the respect, the impact. I let her take the path to get it the hard way. She paid the price in sweat and discipline. She earned the reward. That wasn't revenge. It was accountability. And it changed both of us for the better. If this story resonated, please like, subscribe, and share, because sometimes the most meaningful victories aren't about taking credit back. They're about making sure the person who envies you finally learns what your life actually costs.